Welcome to DS Trucks. In today's video, I want to talk about the new 7.3 and is it worth the upgrade. Here we have our 2022. We just picked it up. It's got the 7.3 with the 10-speed. It is a pulling machine. It has so much good torque and it pulls great. And we're upgrading from our 6.2 gas V8. But the question is it worth it? Now, just looking at the outside of the truck, not really. It looks kind of the same. I mean, the headlights look from here to there. They're like the same thing almost. I mean, it's a curve. It's not a curve. It's more square. To the untrained eye, they're the same thing. I mean, we know because we know Fords and we know Super Duties, but Sally doesn't know. So, from the looks point of view, trucks look the same. I'm going to go ahead and say they look the same. From the engine point of view, though, I have to say, pretty happy with the 6.2 over the years, but this new 7.3, definitely impressed. Let's pop the hood on both of these, take a quick look underneath. I'm going to climb up on here. Let's peek up in here. So what do we have here? This is the new 7.3, a pushrod V8. Basically, what does that mean for the consumer? It means a smaller package, maybe more low-end torque, but I guess the 6.2 could have been set up to have better low-end torque. I would imagine if the 6.2 was 7.3 liters of displacement, the power and torque would be about the same, about similar. So the fact that it's a pushrod engine, it doesn't really mean too much as far as power and torque compared to the overhead valve design. But maybe there's some minor differences because it's a pushrod. Really, a pushrod engine gives you that smaller package. As you see, when you stand up here, you can see more space. If you wanted to service the spark plugs, they're right there. If you wanted to do exhaust manifolds, they're right there. That's going to be something that comes up eventually on a plow truck. The exhaust manifolds break, and that's a lot of money to replace one of those when it's right up against the frame like it would be on a 6.2. So what does it mean to have the 7.3? It means better serviceability. It means that, these pushrod engines, because they have the push rods moving the rocker arm, going to the camshaft, going through the lifter to the camshaft, technically these engines do not have the same high RPM that a overhead cam engine can have. Not saying that this engine can't do anything that this old 6.2 can't do, but just to put it out there, this design it's just a better design for serviceability, smaller package, and it is cheaper for the OEM. Like, it's cheaper to build a 7.3 than it is to build a 6.2. There's probably less profit for Ford building this engine. This engine, the 6.2, freaking has 2 sets of plugs per cylinder. It's got 16 spark plugs, so that's more money compared to that 7.3. It only has one. The 7.3 only has 1 plug per cylinder. The 6.2, you want to do exhaust manifolds on the 6.2? Get in there. Look how tight it is. Not easy. You can't even see the studs. Right up against the engine mount. Those things probably won't even fit out of there. You might have to lift the motor a little. Alternator. The 7.3 is optional with a dual alternator. 397 amps of alternator power. You could throw an inverter in this truck. Pretty beefy inverter. Your snow plows are going to run better. All your electronics are going to run better. And really, for the boom trucks and other things like that need a ton of power, whatever, maybe it's like an ambulance or something and it needs that power, well, that 7.3, well, you can't. There's no room for 2 alternators here because this motor's too big. Now, why would an overhead cam or overhead valve, they're both overhead valve, but why would an overhead cam engine be better? Well, if it actually had dual overhead cams with twin variable valve timing, then it would be potentially better. The computer could turn the exhaust and intake valves independently. Where both these engines do have variable valve timing, being that they share the camshaft, there's less precise control over the valves, unlike an EcoBoost or a 5-liter. Those two engines, even a 2.7, they have twin variable valve timings where both of the camshafts, or all four of the camshafts, both have solenoids that can control their position based on whatever the computer wants to do, and it can move the intake and exhaust independently of each other, which in turn means that the computer can make more power at the end of the day. Now, these do have variable valve timing as well. It's just not as much. I don't think there's as much that these computers can do. I mean, they can move the cam timing a little, but when they do move the cam timing, it moves the intake timing along with the exhaust timing. Those two things can't be moved independently because this moves. There's a single camshaft that opens on the 7.3. The single camshaft opens both banks versus the 6.2 here. This requires two solenoids, two VCT solenoids, versus the 7.3, which needs one. Maybe the 7.3 solenoid that controls the one camshaft timing is a little bit bigger. I don't know, but nonetheless, it just works out cheaper to build a pushrod engine. And that means that the manufacturer can offer more features and have the same profit margin on the 7.3. So dual alternators, things like that, they can offer that. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're actually charging a premium for this motor, but it's actually probably costing them less money to build it. You have a shorter timing chain. I mean, your chain is much shorter versus the 6.2 over there. The chain's got to wrap all the way around like this. It's got to wrap all the way around. This chain on the 7.3, literally smaller chain, just right there in the middle. So everything about building a pushrod engine is cheaper, and it really makes sense to build it this way unless you're going to build a high RPM application or a twin variable valve timing application or something like that. It doesn't really make sense to build it with the overhead cam design. So at the end of the day, this engine, I mean, Ford's making a lot better profit on this motor. Now, maybe the internals are a little bit better. Maybe it has, I do believe it does have a forged internals and better parts inside, like the crankshaft might be forged versus not on the 6.2. Little things like that might be where they spend more money, and they're able to spend more money per unit because this engine is cheaper to manufacture. It's smaller. You got a guy on assembly line swinging this cab down. He's probably not swinging the engine into the cab, but he's probably swinging. They probably got to marry these two components together on a big machine, and it just makes everything easier when there's that much more room between the motor and the frame and everything else. Like when we pop under here and look up, let's see if we can really see the difference here. If you look through here, a lot more space, making the engine a lot more serviceable, and making the repairs ultimately cheaper. But hey, check this out. Nothing like looking up underneath a brand new truck. Everything is just new. Beautiful sight. But anyway, that's just my quick video here. Why the differences between the 7.3. I don't know what I'm going to call this thing. 7.3 versus 6.2. Is it worth the upgrade? As far as power, 7.3 is most definitely worth the upgrade. It's very powerful. It drives better daily. But the 6.2, guys, 6.2 isn't bad. Don't get me wrong. It's not a bad engine. It's done everything we needed to do. Now, is it worth it? Probably. I mean, not really. But I just wanted something new for the channel. So that's why we did it. And, I'm a YouTuber, so I do things that, it's more work. I mean, I had to go and pick this up, and now I got to trade this in. And there was nothing wrong with this truck. It's a good truck. 7.3 is just a little bit better, But anyway, my name is Sean. This is DS Trucks. See you guys in the next video. Over and out.